Port Hueneme Water Agency meeting to order.
Chair, if we could just get the thumbs up from IT to make sure that recording has begun.
Okay, great.
Okay, there's the thumbs up. Please proceed.
So I'll repeat. We're opening the Port Hueneme Water Agency regular regular meeting agenda, and it's now 4 o'clock. And this meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Government Code Section 54953, subdivisions and recommendation of the Ventura County Public Health, issued on September 21st, 2021. Social distance recommendation as determined by the City Council on October 4th, 2021. So with that, I'm going to call it to order. Can we take roll call, please?
Member Bouchard? I believe you were muted, sir. I see you.
Oh, I'm here.
Thank you. Member Hernandez?
Present.
Member Perez?
Here.
Ex officio member Jacobson?
Here.
Vice Chair Dudley?
Here.
And Chair Rollins?
Here.
Everybody is present.
Okay, so at this point, do we have any public comments, Ms. City Clerk?
No, sir. I've received no public comments.
Okay, so can I get a motion to approve the Port Hueneme Water Agency agenda for October 18th, 2021?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dudley?
Yes.
Member Bouchard?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
And Chair Rollins?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, according to the agenda, there are no presentations at this time. So let's just move on to the number one part of our agenda, AB 361, remote meeting compliance. City Attorney, Mr. Spalding, can you discuss this with us?
Will do. Thank you, Chair Rollins and PHWA board members. On March 4th, 2020, Governor Newsom, we all know, declared a state of emergency in California, and we all kind of entered the Zoom realm of meetings. And this was accomplished through a series of executive orders, N2520, 2920, and 3520. Each of these orders expired effectively on September 30th. And during that time, what happened was there was a bill, Assembly Bill 361, which had provisions that would allow cities and other local agencies to move forward with remote meetings based on a series of specified findings. And so what this bill did was it amended Section 54954 of the Government Code inside the Brown Act, and it basically allows remote meetings to continue based on certain findings of whatever the legislative body of the local agency says. And so for both of the ways to move forward, you have to meet two criteria. With remote meetings, you have to meet two criteria. One is that there's a proclaimed state of emergency related to, or there's a proclaimed state of emergency in the state of California. That being said, we already know that March 4th, 2020, the governor ordered a state of emergency, and that state of emergency has not been rescinded. So that's still in existence. And then the city or the PHWA would have to find either that state or local officials have recommended measures to promote social distancing for the protection of public health, safety, or welfare, or that the legislative body has determined that in-person meetings pose an imminent threat to the attendees' health and or safety. And if the legislative body of a local agency makes these findings, it allows the local agency to go into remote meetings for a period of 30 days, and then the findings would have to be reevaluated every 30 days. And as long as we continue to do that, we can stay in remote meetings, given the fact that there's a proclaimed state of emergency and either we've made one of those two findings. So at the last regular city council meeting, the city council made that finding and determined that there's a proclaimed state of emergency and that the Ventura County Public Health Officer on September 21st, 2021 recommended social distancing and sent that advice letter to all of the local agencies within the county of Ventura. And so for that reason, we're starting these meetings with PHWA socially distanced and via Zoom. But because PHWA is a joint powers authority and has its own legislative body, the PHWA board members would have to make similar findings in order to continue remotely.
Okay, well, thank you for that detailed description. So do we have any discussion on this at this point in time? At this point in time, do you folks feel that we want to continue with a remote meeting, or do you feel that you want to meet in person? Thoughts?
Well, I'll
Yes.
speak. I
Yes.
think since we voted with the city council to resume the Zoom meetings, for the one consideration was the inability to social distance in the council chambers, and then people don't always wear their masks correctly. So I know that I mentioned the fact that I didn't feel entirely safe, and I know Marcus has already spoken up, and we have 2 council members here who also voted to go back to Zoom meetings. So I think it would be contradictory for me to vote to stay in person meetings versus Zoom meetings.
And if I might clarify, given the fact that the governor's state of emergency from March 4th, 2020 remains in effect, element number 1 is satisfied. Given the September 21st, 2021 letter from the Ventura County Public Health Officer recommending social distancing, based on those findings alone, we have the ability to continue in remote. There wouldn't be any need for discussion on imminent health or anything like imminent threats to health or anything like that. We already have the criteria satisfied to move forward. We would just need to be clear on a motion and second that that's what the findings of this legislative body are saying.
Yes, Mr. Bouchard.
Thank you for that explanation. I wasn't clear what the motion would be asked for, so I didn't proceed with making a motion. So I would move that the PHWA board make the finding that there is a declared state of emergency, and B, that the September 21st, 2021 from Ventura County Public Health Office finding that recommendation of social distancing exists, and that the PHWA board continue to meet remotely until such time those criteria are not satisfied or the 30 days brought back.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion, a second. The only comment I would make would be we're going to have to bring this back every 30 days right now, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, so there's an motion on the floor by Mr. Bouchard and seconded by Ms. Perez to continue remote meetings for the next 30 days. Can we have a vote, roll call vote?
Member Bouchard?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dudley?
Yes.
And Chair Rollins?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll now move on to the consent agenda. The minutes of the Water Agency's regular meeting on September 20th, 2021. There's a recommendation to approve the Water Agency regular meeting. Can we have a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Okay. I guess we need a roll call vote on that.
Vice Chair Dudley?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Member Bouchard?
I'll abstain as I was not present.
Thank you, sir. Member Perez?
Yes.
And Chair Rollins?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1 with Member Bouchard abstaining.
Okay, according to my agenda here, there are no public hearings at this time. Am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so now let's move on to the business items. Number 3, the Brackish Water Reclamation Demonstration Facility Operational Report by Mr. Villafano.
Good afternoon, Board. This afternoon, this is the operational report for the month of September. During the month of September, the treatment plant was operational the whole month. And for the month of September, our water demand was 3.84 million gallons per day, which was less than in August. In August of this year, our water demand was 3.98 million gallons per day. Last year, in September, the plant did not operate for the first 9 days because of the PHWA water line break. Was still almost completed the repair. During the month of September 2021, United Water supplied approximately 81% of our water, and Cayugas supplied approximately 19% of our water. And to date, we've used 2,734 acre feet of water from United Water, which is approximately 75% of our annual allocation. And this is yearly allocation. So for the months of October, November, and December, we still have 25% of our water allocation to use. So we're on track. We're not going to exceed that water. Our water demand usually starts dropping about this time of year. So we're good there. And with respect to Cayugas water, we've only used approximately 33% of our allocation of state water. Are there any questions?
Any questions from our board? Yes, Mr. Bouchard.
Don, can you remind us, is the allocation that you're referring to tracked on the water year of October 1st to September 30th? I know that the GMA allocation is tracked one way. Is the your United or OH pipeline water tracked on a calendar year?
It's a calendar year.
Is there any anticipation of them changing that so that at least the two allocation periods are aligning for the purpose of, we would hope we'd never fall into surcharge, but that allocation period and surcharge for the GMA is under the water year of October 1 to September 30th. And, it would seem to me that your OH calculation or your OH allocation may want to be adjusted that way.
I have not heard of any talk about doing that. I would appreciate if you would send me an email specifically asking, and then I will follow up that for you on that.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have another question. Is the report on the 25% drought water reduction part of this report, or is that handled somewhere else? Does that get discussed on another item in a future meeting?
That'll be discussed at a future meeting. I'm still getting information from Cayugas and putting together information that was previously used when the drought ordinance was put into place. I will be presenting to the city on that.
Okay.
Because the city adopts the drought ordinance for reduction there, but I will be presenting to this board also.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So when will the reduction figures kick in?
Right now we're at a voluntary 10% reduction, and the state is still working on final, whether or not they're going to be mandatory reductions. But what I'm going to be presenting to the city council is what we did in the past when Andy Santa Maria was your public works director. And I will be presenting on that because in 2017, after a very good year, we went back to a level 1 drought condition. We will be moving back to a level 2 drought condition. And I have to present that to the city council, which will probably be in November. Hopefully we have, we got a little bit of rain last night. Hopefully it continues, and cross your fingers. Hopefully we have a wet year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Just one, Director Villafana. While I appreciate the overall, 30,000-foot view presentation that you give us each month in regards to consumption and such, now that we have Mr. Birch as the, general manager, is there an expectation where we're going to be receiving a more detailed ops report in regards to, the operation of the plant and just, capital improvement projects, things that we need to focus on, in the short and long-term future?
We will come back with that. It'll probably be a joint presentation between Mr. Birch and myself on that. We do have a number of capital projects that were a direct result of the Fleming report, which was the facilities condition. We are currently, the board has approved a professional service agreement with Avila Structural Engineers. That analysis is underway. You approved a professional services agreement with Lucci and Associates, an electrical engineer, and that project is underway, which was specifically outlined in the Fleming report. So we can and will come back with an update on what our capital projects are, probably in the first part of the year.
That would be great. And, I just bring that up in that, as a, being my first year as part of the, on the board for the agency, I just kind of feel like I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage not knowing the inner workings, of the plant and, just general day-to-day operational things that I think in a certain capacity, the city council folks get a better, vision or view of the city's operations where, we meet with you once a month, but it doesn't seem like we're, really getting into, short-term and long-term planning and, just the general kind of vision of the agency and where we're going. So I kind of feel like sometimes we're here to, approve expenditures, but I'm not really finding that I'm getting like a high level of exposure, in regards to the agency. So I would appreciate just, any information that you might consider anecdotal. It's beneficial to all of us as a board, and more detail I would greatly appreciate.
One thing we could do is we could schedule a tour of the plant for you, and that would be probably 2 at a time. I would defer to our city attorney that we don't violate the Brown Act, but probably Kevin, what would be the maximum number I could have, or could I have the whole group if it was strictly for a tour?
We can do 2-1 meetings. We have to avoid having 3 of them. Anytime 3 members of the governing body attend and discuss anything relating to the subject matter jurisdiction of that agency, the public has to be invited.
All right. Well, Mr. Debley, if you would like to reach out to me, we could schedule a tour for you. And if there's another board member that would like to join that, possibly we could coordinate, or we would be more than happy to provide individual tours to whichever board members would like to reach out to me. Please do, and we'll schedule a tour for you.
Yeah, I guess I would reconfirm that when I became a member of the Gold Coast and also the Ventura County Transportation, the staff would bring us on tours and kind of give us kind of an up close and personal tour of like what they're all about and, how we fit in. And I think that, gives you kind of a better foundation when you're coming into these monthly meetings, making decisions. So I don't think we need a motion for that. I think there's a general consensus that let's do it. So can you arrange for something like Alfano.
Mr. Villafana just
Right,
needs us to
if-
send him an email if we're requesting a tour.
Yeah, please send me, you all have my email address. Please send me a request and what dates would work best for you. And we'll do our best to accommodate you. I don't think it should be a problem.
Great.
We'll work with setting up a tour for whichever board members would like to be there.
Right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
They receive and file report. Any other comments before we move on to the next agenda item? Let's see, I guess we need a roll call vote for this too. So let's have a roll call vote for this.
Sure, we need a motion and a second, and then I'd be happy to do so.
I
Should-
move that we receive and file the Brackish Water Reclamation Demonstration Facility Operational Report.
I'll
Second. Okay, Ms. Perez, second.
Okay, roll call vote. Member Hernandez,
Yes.
Member Perez,
Yes.
Member Bouchard,
Yes.
Vice Chair Dudley,
Yes.
and Chair Rollins.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move on to agenda item number 4. Professional services agreement with Michael K. Nunley and Associates for the update of the emergency response plan for the City of Port Hueneme Water Department, the Port Hueneme Water Agency, and the Channel Islands Beach Community Services District. Now, will this be given by you, Mr. Villafano, or?
No, Mr. Birch, our water general manager, will be presenting this. So, Mr. Birch, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, board. The background and analysis on this is on October 23rd, 2018, the America Water Infrastructure Act was signed into law, and Section 2013 requires community water systems to prepare the necessary documents to comply with the requirements of an emergency response plan. Starting in 2020, community drinking water systems serving more than 3,300 people were required to comply with the 2018 AWIA, which include developing and updating an emergency response plan, the ERP, and must submit certification of completion to the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency by December 29, 2021. The current unified emergency response plan was for the City of Port Hueneme Water Agency, and Channel Islands Beach Community Service District is dated January 20th, 15. The EPR contains sections including emergency response action guides in events of fires, injuries, threats, civil disorders, physical attacks, security breaches, workplace violence, aircraft crash incidents, and adjacent facilities, weather, floods, tsunami, and earthquakes. It also contains water system information like infrastructure location, maps, plans, incident command organization structures, and a variety of notifications and procedures for hazardous material incidences and actions to take place in all emergencies. The Water Surge Contingency Plan is a state mandated document that looks at water supply limitations and lays out water conservation methods. The Water Surge Contingency Plan enables an agency to control water use, provided water supplies, and plan for the implement of water management measures in a fair manner to benefit the public. The Emergency Response Plan is the EPA regulated document. The main goals of the ERP are to develop strategies to improve the resiliency of the system, develop plans and procedures that can be utilized in the event of a malicious act or a natural hazard, develop actions which can eliminate or significantly lessen the impact of a malicious act or natural hazard, and develop strategies to aid in the detection of malicious acts or natural hazards against the water system. The fiscal impact of this would be no more than $28,308, and it would be charged to the contract services miscellaneous, and will be allotted between Port Hueneme Water Agency, City of Port Hueneme, and Channel Islands Beach Community Services, according with existing agreements. Do I have any questions?
I do have a question.
Yes, Ms. Perez.
Given that we're about 2.5 months before the deadline and not knowing personally the extensiveness of this plan, is that giving us enough time to get it completed in time?
Yes, we believe we can get it done. What it is it's an update. It's not a brand new plan, so they'll be taking what we already have and updating the information on it.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. I was looking for the current draft of the ERP, and I couldn't find it. It's not online. Is that available to us anywhere?
It is not a public document, but I believe it would be available to you guys upon request, since you're the board members.
Okay, and it's not a public document because why?
It lays out the response plans that we have, the incident command locations, and other information that's kind of
okay. Not okay. Well, it comes, I think, at a very timely opportunity, since the city is also near conclusion of the writing of the emergency operations plan. Sorry, I'm not thinking straight today. So they're almost done writing the EOP, and I'm sure there's a lot of information that can be gleaned from that plan that can go into the ERP. So I would encourage you to take a look at that draft, and that is a public document. So I'm sure it'll be quite helpful.
okay, we will do that.
To follow up on Member Hernandez's question, how do we go about, who do we request a copy of the 2015 plan from?
You can either request it through Dawn or myself.
Okay, I would like a copy of it.
Maybe it's best, is it a lengthy copy? Maybe you could send it to all of our board members.
It is pretty lengthy, but we could send it to all the board members if requested.
If I may, it is very voluminous. I have it downloaded on a flash drive, and we could either do a Dropbox where you could access the documents, or we could provide a flash drive for your convenience, whichever the board members would prefer. Just send an email to Mr. Birch or myself, and we'll do whichever method you would prefer.
Great. I just had one question. I mean, in preliminary preparation for this report, are you guys advised of any new changes coming up from the last one that you kind of know of preliminarily?
I am not aware of any new changes coming up.
Okay.
Mostly updates.
Okay.
Mr. Birch, I believe that the plan is due for updates 6 months after the certification of the urban water management plan. So is that December 29th when that's due, or is this a date that's just set by staff?
I believe that December 29th is the date it's due to, and it's a certification to the EPA that we have to send them.
Yes, Mr. Bouchard.
I appreciate the update and the analysis and the background. And, I took a look at the scope of work here and the amount of man hours, and thankful that you gave me the opportunity, basically set it up. If we're doing an update, we've got basically full-time equivalent of somebody for a month and a half to update. I know it's a voluminous document, but a lot of the scope of work is collecting other data, reinserting studies that are already in there. It seems like for an update, this is an awfully large scope of work and task that really they're going to be reliant on you and your staff to provide that data. I'm concerned the level of effort that's being scoped out within the document for an update, and more importantly, I guess would be, you know, this is an emergency response plan for us, and I want to make sure that the people that would actually use this thing are familiar with it. That consultant will have zero institutional background, won't be here when the emergency happens, and if we're just handing it over to them, we have a lot of new staff here that may not have been part of the development of it. I want to make sure it's not $30,000 going to collect dust, and that the update is and the level of effort that the consultant's asking for is necessary for an update that I think we all paid really good money to provide the original ERP plan that addresses that. And in your comments, you said that there's just updates. Do we have like a list of what they have to update that's creating this bulk of effort in work? I mean, if they're just reinserting subordinate documents like our urban water master plan that we paid them to write, updating staffing list, I don't know what that level of update effort is, and it's a lot of consulting time, and I'm just want to make sure that we're being fiscally responsible in that way.
I understand that. What it does is it uses a standardized emergency management system. So we're on page with any other agency, locally, statewide, or federally. And we do train our operators on how to use it, where the location is, where the information is at. It has a lot of pull-out forms in it that you kind of plug in the information when the incident happens. What's the incident? Where is it at? What's the magnitude? And that type of information. And the key is we do have to get that to our operators so they're aware of what's going on with it. We have a lot of new operators at this time. I would say some of them are not aware of what's going on with the old one, but that would be part of this. There's a training section on it that we would get to the operators so they're aware of the document.
Yes, Ms. Hernandez.
Thank you, Director Bouchard, for sharing that information and sharing your concerns. I had a couple more questions for Mr. Birch, and one is, what is the date of the previous, or the current version of the ERP? What's
2015.
Okay, so it hasn't been, okay. Well, being somebody who writes emergency response plans, when I looked at this proposal, I was also concerned about the scope of work, that it was not in depth enough. I thought the price was pretty good, considering the level of effort that actually goes in to updating a plan like this. I know because I end up on my contracts with agencies spending way more time than I originally bid. It is a lot of work, and there's some things specifically I think you're going to have to consider, and that's the ADA requirements. If this plan, which is why I wanted to see it, I think it was really important that we see the plan so people can understand the scope and what's involved in the update. ADA requirements are one thing that should probably be included, considering that you're going as far as talking about the incident command system, the standard emergency management system. Who falls into that organization should also be included. A matrix of support, lead responsibilities, supporting responsibilities that requires coordination with the other agencies. And there might be some updating of those positions and phone numbers along with those positions, contact lists, things like that. I would expect should also be updated. I don't even know how many pages we're talking about here, so it's really, really hard to gauge the level of effort we're talking about. But I just know from experience that it takes a lot of time. It may appear on paper to be a simple scope of work and an easy task, but I assure you it is not, especially something that's that old. 2015 is several years old. But the consultant who takes this job will have to make sure that it's up to date, not only with ADA, but all the different water requirements the laws that have been put into effect since 2015. So that would be another expectation I would have in here.
Okay. I had just one comment. What is the bid process when you're going out for this? Was the company selected based on bids from other companies or from their experience, or what was kind of the process behind that?
They were chosen through for knowledge of our system and their experience with emergency response plans.
Okay.
If I may add that typically professional services are not go out for bid. You base it selection on experience, local work experience, and that type of track record. So professional services do not get bid out, architectural or engineering services.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions at this point in time? Yes, Mr. Debley.
Yes, sorry. Earlier I misspoke. It's not 6 months from the certification of the urban water management plan. It's 6 months from the certification of the risk and resilience assessment. So I apologize for that. But Director Villafana, do you know when we did that? Just to confirm our time frame here, because it seems like we're running up against a very short window for completing this update to our emergency response plan.
I believe the board adopted it at it was the June or July meeting. So yes, we are running up against it. However, I'm sure that we could probably request a 30 or 60-day extension if required.
So thank you. And then my only other comment is just to kind of support what Jared said in regards to, when plans like this are developed by local agencies with an expectation for implementation at some future date. In my experience, it's imperative that those staff that would be putting the plan in use are directly engaged in developing the plan and updating the plan versus outsourcing it to a consultant. I think we kind of have a roadmap here in that the plan isn't that old. It's 2015. And, it is a lot of updates to contacts, local, state, federal partners that would be involved in some sort of emergency situation that the plan would be put in use. And, I'm kind of an advocate for, utilizing our own resources, especially Mr. Birch being relatively new. It's a good opportunity for plugging into that institutional knowledge that is walking out the door on a daily basis in local government. It is a lot of data mining that's required as part of this update that's going to require staff time by not only the city, but the service district as well as the Navy to, provide these necessary updates. And I just wonder, is this something that is a task that should be taken by staff and not delegated to a consultant?
I believe that to properly meet all of the requirements of it should be sent out to a consultant. We don't deal with it that much. These consultants are very familiar with doing the emergency response plan, so they know all the areas of it. Brian, are you there? Can you shed any light to this? Brian McCauley is from the MKN. I believe he's in on the meeting right now.
Thanks, David. Yeah, I can shed a little bit of light on this. We've dealt with the requirements of AWIA quite a bit. They're they're fairly vague. The requirements are. EPA has not provided a whole lot of guidance, and neither has the State Water Resources Control Board on how to complete these and what all needs to be included. So through a lot of our experience in completing these and working with AWWA and conversations with some of these other regulatory agencies and feedback from other agencies, we've developed quite a bit of experience on how to navigate the requirements, how to get the best kind of audit protection in case EPA ever comes back and says, we want to see what you did to meet these requirements. And we've gained quite a bit of knowledge in navigating the requirements and making sure everything is satisfied. The other thing I will note is that this ERP update has to specifically address the findings of the risk and resilience assessment, which is also a document that my firm prepared. So,
were some of the items that Mrs. Hernandez brought up included in this new report automatically, or are those things that we have to make sure are included?
So this scope of work is specifically to address the requirements of AWIA. Some of those will be, by default encapsulated, but a full audit of all the ADA requirements and additional state and regulatory requirements is not directly addressed in this scope of work, but is certainly something that can be looked into.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Oh, yes, Mr. Bouchard, and then Mrs. Hernandez. Ms. Hernandez.
If you'll entertain me, Chair, I'd like to ask both the consultant a brief question, then ask Director Hernandez a question based on her experience. So I guess following up on Director Hernandez's questions and mine and the need to address certain things, in your experience, Mr. McCauley, is it from 2015 to today, is there a whole host of new requirements? You mentioned in your comments that the EPA is pretty vague, State Water Board, pretty vague on what they're asking for. What are, I guess I'm struggling with, what are the new requirements that that we have this level of work effort to put into? And maybe those aren't specific enough for you to be able to answer because of the vagueness of the guidance, but it's just curiosity for me. It's again, it's an update, and I would think the update would have maybe those, I'm going to leave my thoughts here, two pieces to it. One would be where the staff could look through and say, hey, that's really outdated information that's in the existing one. We need to update these staffing folks, the local agency phone numbers, contact numbers. Perhaps there's information about who vendors are in there that staff would look at and update, and then look to you folks to fill in the gaps of, hey, your 2015 document is inadequate in these areas.
Yeah, so I'll thank you for that question. I appreciate it. I'll kind of answer it in two parts. One being addressing new requirements since 2015. AWIA came into law in 2018. So these are, and this is the first time, this round is the first time that anyone's had to do these updates to meet these requirements. So this is all new information and new requirements. This 2020 round of risk and resilience assessments and ERP updates has never been required before. So it's a lot of new information to navigate for this guidance. As far as the time to, and, you know, responsibility to update some of these items. The approach generally that we've taken that seems to work pretty well is to work directly with the agency and collect. We have a list of information that we like to collect, such as contact lists, the existing ERP, other emergency SOPs. And then we'll go through and do, I don't want to call it an audit, but a very detailed look at the existing ERP and where it, and we'll essentially do an audit of where it's deficient with regards to these requirements, what can be added, what doesn't necessarily need to be in there, what's contradictory, things of that nature. So that combing through is what really takes the majority of the time. And then after that, it's really an integration of a lot of the information that's been collected, other plans that haven't necessarily been integrated with the ERP prior, and then ensuring that it does meet the AWIA requirements and complies with the new law.
Thank you. Director Hernandez, I mean, given your background in doing this, and you mentioned earlier in your comments that you thought that this was a reasonable amount of time. In fact, you thought maybe it's a little short, and you're fairly impressed they're able to do it with that level of effort. And you were speaking, I mean, doing an update to something like this, you're not surprised at that level of effort either.
Right. There are a lot of missing pieces here, I think, in the scope of work, and things are unanticipated. That there are things that you might not know you're going to come across that will take up a lot of time. A couple of things to that comment are the risk assessment. What kind of risk assessment will you be doing or using as part of this plan? Every plan has to have a risk assessment. I didn't see it in the scope of work. Are you going to borrow it from the county's hazard mitigation plan or the city's EOP? Or are you going to conduct a separate, because we're really coming down from the 30,000 foot level from an EOP to something that's more department or service oriented, you know, functionally oriented toward water. So I would imagine that a more in-depth risk assessment would have to be done. So do you have plans to do that as well?
So the risk and resilience assessment was something that we completed and certified to the EPA in June, the end of June. I believe it was June 29th
Right.
of this year. So that's already been completed.
Okay.
And that's
specific to our region, our area, right?
Correct. It's specific to the Port Hueneme Water Agency and the city water department. We also completed the risk and resilience assessment for Channel Islands Beach Community Services District. So those have all been completed.
Great. Okay.
And this document will directly look at the findings of those risk assessments and address the concerns there.
Okay. To address Director Debley's concern about involving people so that we can take advantage of the institutional knowledge or begin building institutional knowledge, will this be a participatory process? I didn't see any reference made to a planning committee, which is pretty common when you develop these plans, is to have a working group of people from the agencies represented.
So we've included a couple planning meetings in the scope of work, and that's definitely something we can do is incorporate a larger group to have a more of a planning committee. Usually what we'll do and what we've kind of proposed to do is meet with select folks from the from the agency. So a general manager, operator. This one's a little unique because it's 3 agencies together doing this. So it would likely be a manager and an operator from each agency that would form, what I might consider a committee. But there are meetings in our scope of work to kind of address those concerns and collect some of that information.
Thank you. I see that there's references here to plans and procedures and strategies. So, I mean, in order to develop those, I think you're really going to need that involvement from the agency, especially when it comes to develop strategies. I don't know if you're talking about mitigative strategies or what, but any type of strategic development, certainly need that level of participation. Training, I think that seems to be a concern of Director Bouchard and Director Debley is once the plan is, part of the involving people in the process enables them to not only get ownership, but also to understand their roles and responsibilities. And it's an educational process in itself by being involved in the development of the plan. But aside from that, once the plan's done, will there be any training or presentation on the overall scope of the plan and how it's supposed to be implemented?
We have not included a training workshop or presentation on how to use the plan in our scope of work. It's certainly something we can provide, but it's not included in this scope of work.
Okay, so Mr. Birch, did you have an idea of how we were going to train on this plan?
We have a rather small group for PHWA in the city of Port Hueneme, and it would be through a series of safety meetings that we would go through there. This is what happens through here, and there's a lot of self-guidance in there. You just need to know where to look for what plan.
Okay. And how to use the forms, right?
Yes.
The ICS forms.
Yes.
Okay. And how to document and do all that. Okay. As far as the updates, I know that there are a number of updates that you're going to come across. The threat alert process has changed. I don't know if they've brought that up to date with the 2015 document. There's going to be some procedural changes. Your equipment lists and inventories are going to change. And I'll have to say, COVID-19 has changed the emergency planning landscape. There's a lot of reference now to having a water emergency, or any kind of emergency, disaster amidst COVID. So things have changed now because of COVID, of how we manage emergencies.
Okay, do we have any other thoughts? Yes, Director Jacobson.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to mention that the Navy is required to do their own ERP. So I wasn't sure if the scope of work was attempting to cover all 3 agencies, Navy, Channel Islands Beach, and the city. But just note that we are completing our own ERP in-house, and the ERP that is conducted for PHWA is for PHWA infrastructure associated with delivery of water. So if there's any questions on our involvement, they can be directed to me to get information for your ERP. But just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I could say one more thing to Mr. Jacobson's comment, since the Navy is doing that, that does not relieve us from doing it, or the city from doing their own plan, or Community Beach Water District from doing their own plan. But the key thing here is how we're all going to collaborate and work together when something does happen. So even though the Navy is doing their own plan, we still need to include the Navy's portion in the ERP. So we understand what they're doing and we can better collaborate when something happens.
Understood. And that's our intent as well. Thank you.
Yes, Director Bouchard.
I'm at the point that I guess I'm prepared to make a motion after hearing the discussion here to support the staff recommendation. I just want to thank the comments here and really emphasize I think the critical role of staff being involved in the development of this of it for all the reasons that Ms. Hernandez, Director Hernandez just laid out, and Director Jacobson. I started my comments in saying I don't want to see this thing be a dust collector on the shelf for 6 years until the next update. And the only way to do that is for staff to be involved so that they understand the integration process and how to properly train those that are going to use it. So I'll support staff's, I'll make a motion to support staff's recommendation, and don't think it's appropriate, but just want to strongly encourage that staff be part of the development of this and integrally, you know what I'm trying to say, I can't spit it out right now, involved in that process.
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. So there's a motion and a second to authorize the executive director to execute the professional services agreement in the amount not to exceed $28,308 with Michael K. Nunley and Associates. Can we have a roll call vote?
Member Bouchard?
Yes.
Member Hernandez?
Yes.
Member Perez?
Yes.
Vice Chair Dudley?
Yes.
And Chair Rollins?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Okay. We now come to the board member reports, comments, and requests for future agenda items. Do we have any reports? Yes, Mr. Bouchard, or Director Bouchard.
Thank you. I just wanted to, this is both, I guess, a very brief report and a request for a future agenda item. United Water Conservation District held their second annual water symposium at which they touched on a lot of subject matter. One that's an emerging project within our area and directly affects Port Hueneme Water Agency is United Water's Brackish water desalinization facility that they are actively working with ex officio member Jacobson and the Navy on the development for site. They're, I believe, for site placement, I believe they're very close to identifying where they will do pilot wells if they get permitted to test it. So exciting stuff. That'll be a big help to the region if it can get constructed and done in the way of water sustainability. My request for a future agenda item is that we've seen the overview of all the United projects. I think this particular project has distinct interest to the Port Hueneme Water Agency and our future planning. If it takes off, the Navy, from what I have heard, and perhaps at that time, ex officio member Jacobson can address that, plans to have access to a great deal of that water, and I understand and support the Navy's mission, but it does have effects on the PHWA if that facility becomes reliant on a separate water source, separate from that of the PHWA. There are things that we just ought to be in the know about for our future planning and addressing, whether it be capacity, capital, financing, all of those things. And I think the earlier we're all involved, the more supportive we can be in what will be a good project for the region in the way of water sustainability, but certainly have constituents and other folks to answer to and want to make sure we understand the process as it goes forward. So that my request is to have a presentation, whether it be from Director Jacobson and United, but we agendize it for discussion to understand the project and talk about what those long-term, right now, the vision for that is.
I think I can start discussing that real quick. Thank you, Director Burchard. I totally concur. That is definitely in our wheelhouse to present to this board our involvement as well as the progress that has been made thus far. I would propose that this be early calendar year as part of the agenda. The main reason is the feasibility study that United is preparing is still underway, and therefore that effort will be more finalized by the end of the year. The feasibility of the study of the project is still being evaluated, and until that becomes an identified feasible project via regulatory drivers as well as involvement of the public and others, that project then can move forward with that sort of support. The Navy's involved specifically with a lot of different aspects in this project to identify if it's feasible or not. And as Director Burchard alluded to, I think there was probably the biggest thing that we can discuss additionally in the future, our involvement with the Prop 1 Round 3 effort. Both the Navy and Fox Canyon GMA supported United's proposal for additional grant funding to identify the feasibility of this project and also initiate the implementation. So looking forward to doing that presentation. We can include, as needed, folks from United, but I am very well ingrained, as it's part of my collateral duties right now, to be a part of this project, part of that project. So I'm definitely willing to do that presentation for the board and answer any questions therein. So definitely open for that, and again would suggest early calendar year. Thank you.
Yes, Director Hernandez.
Yeah, I support the request for that agenda item too. I attended the sustainability workshop, and the Navy presentation was excellent. Thank you, Mr. Jacobson, for that. And there was so much information that had regional applicability, and so to have something that's just specific to this one project would be great.
Yeah, great news. Thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Spalding, we don't have to do anything like we do with the city council and vote on it. We could just.
No, in fact, I was about ready to interject and say that we shouldn't be discussing it.
Okay, so the direction of the board is to put this on the agenda at the beginning of next year. So look forward to seeing that presentation. So any other board comments or yes, Director Hernandez? I can't hear you, your voice.
I just put in today a request to attend the annual water symposium, which is happening this Thursday on the 21st. So if you're interested, anyone's interested in participating in that, I just sent my request to Elvia, and she was going to process it for me.
I'm registered.
Okay, for anybody else, just I'm hoping that's not too late.
Yep. The Navy is actually a panelist. I'm a panelist on that symposium, so I will be a part of that as well.
I'll show up if we can heckle ex officio member Jacobson.
I would love to get to. Actually, I'm surprised that the United Symposium had very few comments, period, or questions. So I think that's something that we need to do more of.
Okay. So we already have a heckler in the crowd.
Yeah, he happens to be only 3 feet tall, so.
So, at this time, any other comments before we adjourn this meeting? Okay, so it is now 5:05, and I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a nice evening.